Today we're going to be taking a look at a brand new backup camera system from Haloview, and that's the BT7 with an integrated tire pressure monitoring system. Now, Haloview claims that they're the first to integrate these two, the backup camera and the TPMS system. And so far, this system looks really cool, and I think it's going to be a game changer for a lot of us. Now, if you've been watching us for a while, you know that I installed another Haloview camera system on this RV back in the spring, and that was the BT11 system with the integrated blind spot detection system. Now, this is not a review on that system, but what I did like about that system was that the screen for it actually went over the rear view mirror. It just kind of clipped on there, which is where you naturally kind of want to look when you want to see what's going on behind you when you're driving down the road. So that's what I liked. What I didn't like about it was all of the cords that were all over my dashboard with that system. There were 3 different cables that were needed to connect that system up. And I really didn't like all those cables all over the place. This camera right here, one of the features I like is it's got one cable that goes into it. It's just the power cable, and that's a lot easier to just kind of get out of the way so it's not cluttering up the dashboard. And speaking of cluttering up the dashboard, many of us have got multiple components up there. So we may have a TPMS system, we may have a backup camera and navigation system that we've got sitting up there. Well, this BT7 is going to take care of at least 2 of those with the backup camera system and the TPMS. So what we're going to talk about here today is just a couple of the features on this thing, and then we'll take a look at all the pieces and parts just so we can see what's in the box. And then we'll go into the installation and setup of the whole system. And then tomorrow is a drive day for us. So we're going to put this system to the test. And then once we pull in, I'll get back with you guys and let you know how it performed out there on the road. So as far as features go, I don't think this thing's a whole lot different than most of the systems that you'll find out there, most of the backup camera systems. So it's, it's got a screen, it's got a camera, and it's got all the pieces and parts that we need to connect them together. Now, one thing that I do know about this one already is because I've tested it out, is this screen is, or it seems to be so far, very crisp and very clean. And I like it much more than that BT11 system, because even though that screen was in a spot that I really liked, it just wasn't a super clear picture. But let's just move into the main feature that I think that everybody's going to want to really hear about, which is the TPMS system. But before I get to that, I do want to say that Haloview sent me this product at no charge, and the only thing they're asking in return is a fair and honest review. So that's what we're doing here. So onto the TPMS system. That's the feature that I think is going to be the game changer here, because again, it just gets that additional component off of your dashboard. Now, according to Haloview, this thing can support up to 32 sensors and 3 different trailers, which is more than I think any of us are ever going to need. And I'm not going to go really in depth on the specs on all those sensors. I can tell you that Haloview says they're accurate to about 1.5 pounds of pressure and 6 degrees Fahrenheit of temperature. But other than that, I was kind of comparing the rest of the specs, meaning the response time and how often each of the sensors is monitored. All of that really is kind of in line with all of the standalone TPMS systems. So I'm not going to go in depth on the rest of those specs. So before we get to really the meat of all of this, which is going to be the setup and installation of everything, what I want to do is just kind of cover all of the different pieces and parts so that we know what's in the box before we get started. So I'm not going to do this in any special order. I'm just going to go through everything. So they give you 2 separate mounts for this system. So this one is the 3M sticky on the bottom, so you can just stick it to your dashboard or stick it to your window if you want. The mount that the screen is currently connected to is just a suction cup mount. And then the third component here is the camera itself. So this is the Haloview BT7 and oddly enough, this is actually the same camera that my current system uses, the BT11 system. So I'm actually not going to need to install this. It's the same camera, and this BT7 system will sync up with it. So that's not going to be something that we're going to go through in this video, is the installation of the camera, because I've already got one back there. No need to do another one. However, what I will say is getting this thing connected is very, very easy. It comes with this standard, I don't know what kind of connection this is on the back, but it comes with this connection here. And if your RV isn't prepped with this type of connection, then they actually give you kind of an extension cable here where you can just plug this in just like this, and then you're just left with the red, black, and green wires to get it all connected up to the running lights in your rig. All right, next we've got 3 antennas here. So the screen itself has got 2 antennas, and then the camera has 1 antenna. Now, I can tell you this, as far as the BT11 system that I have, I had to go out and buy the extension cable for the antenna to run all the way across the top of my roof in order to get a good signal as I'm driving down the road. All right, next they give you two power supply cables. So one is just a regular USB to USB-C, and then the other one is this standard cigarette lighter adapter that also just plugs right into the side of the head unit. So two different ways to plug that in. Don't know how I'm going to do it yet. We'll figure that out when I go to install it in the truck. And then again, we've just got an assortment of cables here to get the camera all connected up to power and get it synced properly. Something that I thought was really smart on Haloview's part was they actually sent two of these signal boosters because they realized that in these long rigs like I have, so we're 44 feet long, there could be an issue with the signal getting from the sensors all the way to the cab of the truck. So normally what we get, and what I have with my standalone TPMS system, is I get one signal booster, and that seems to work okay. But Haloview has given us two of these so that you can get one mounted closer to the wheels where the sensors are, and then you can get one mounted, you know, maybe up in the front area of your RV where the battery is. And then you've got two signal boosters so that you don't lose connection to your sensors on your wheels as you're going down the road. So I thought that was pretty clever of them to just go ahead and supply two of these. Next is the sensors themselves. So I've got 6 sensors here, 4 for my wheels going down the road, 1 for the spare, and then 1 as just a spare sensor to have in case one of them goes south. And then of course they give you the batteries for those sensors as well. And then all we have here is just an assortment of tools and supplies that you need to put everything together. So that's it for the pieces and parts. I think that's pretty straightforward. Most people can figure out what's going on with all this stuff when you open up the box. So I want to get to the meat of all of this again, which is the installation and the setup of this. All right, so one tip here that'll make all of this installation and setup a little bit easier is if you have a power bank like this, you can use it to power on the monitor, which will help you get through that syncing process with the camera a little bit faster. I'm also going to use this when I'm syncing up all the TPMS sensors. I can just have this connected up to the monitor and just walk around to each tire individually and get them synced up. All right, before we get in the cab and we start hooking everything up, we need to sync this camera. Now, normally this wouldn't need to be done because the camera and the monitor come shipped synced together. Per the instructions, they come synced together on channel 4. There are 4 different channels because you can have 4 different cameras on this system. However, I'm syncing this to a camera that I already had, so we have to go through that syncing process. So we're gonna walk through that process real quick. It's super simple. All that has to be done is you have to go to the syncing option on the monitor, and once you hit the sync button, it gives you something like 50 seconds or something like that to then run outside and hit the sync button on the camera itself. So what I've actually got right now is Candace is inside. She's gonna hit the sync button on the monitor. I'm gonna climb up on the ladder right there, and we're gonna hit the sync button on the camera, and it should just sync right up. Okay, go ahead and hit the sync.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna hit the button back here. And although I haven't actually seen it, Candace said there's a nice clear picture on there. It said we had a successful sync. So we're gonna go in and take a look at it. Now, before we go out and we actually sync up all the TPMS sensors, I just wanted to show what that looks like inside of the rig here real quick, because I had the feeling that there's gonna be some lighting issues outside and some glare issues. So we'll just walk through that real quick here. This is super simple. So all we're gonna do is we're just gonna take the head unit with us, and we're gonna walk around to each tire. And when we get to a tire, all we're gonna do is select the position that we're at on the trailer. So I'm gonna start on the passenger side front tire on the rig, and we're gonna sync that one first. So all we need to do, so this is our tow vehicle up here, and this all back here is our trailer. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna tap whichever spot that we wanna sync up. So in this case, it would be the passenger side front tire. And when we do that, then we have all the sensor data back down here. And all we're gonna do is we're just gonna hit this auto learn button right here, and it's gonna automatically sync up with that sensor. It'll put the ID of that sensor in there, and then it will indicate the temperature and the pressure of that sensor. So I just wanted to show that before we walk out there, because like I said, I think there's going to be some glare issues and you won't be able to see what's going on the screen, but we'll still walk through it so that we can see exactly how easy it is and how quickly we can sync all of these TPMS sensors. Oh, and then we're going to come back in and we're going to program all of the high and low pressure set points as well as the high temperature set point. Now, if you were to install these sensors at your normal cold inflation pressure, then you may not have to set any of those high and low pressure alarms at all, because what the system does is it will sense whatever pressure it is when it gets installed, and it will basically set the high pressure alarm at 120% of whatever that cold inflation pressure is. And then the low pressure, I think, is like 90 or 95% of that cold inflation pressure. I don't remember exactly what the bottom band is, but it's a certain amount and it will automatically set those set points for you. However, I'm not at my cold inflation pressure. I'm not going to do that till tomorrow before we get underway. So I'm going to come in here and just manually set my high and low pressure alarms and my high temperature alarm. All right, so before we can get to the TPMS sensors and get them installed, we need to get the signal booster up and running. This is going to be really simple. And for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and go with these alligator clips because I just want to make sure that I'm good with this whole system before I start permanently installing anything. So we're just going to use the alligator clips for now. It's just going to come straight off of the battery terminals here. And I don't even think I'm going to really mount this at this point. I'll probably just set it in here somewhere temporarily where it's not going to move around too much until we can decide whether this system is what we want long term. All right, each of these sensors is going to come with a little, they call it a security nut, that basically you're going to thread that on first, and then we'll thread on the sensor itself, and then we'll tighten this security nut up against the sensor. Now, it's supposed to prevent people from stealing your sensors, but you know what? If they've got a wrench, they can steal your sensors, but we're going to do it anyway. All right, and so the process here is we're going to get into the TPMS menu. All right, back into that screen there. And we're going to hit that right front tire. Like I said before, we'll just hit that space there. And right now it's like kind of a grayish blue. And I think once it gets paired, it's going to turn to just a bluish color. So we'll hit that, we'll highlight it. This is going to be sensor number 12. We're going to hit auto learn. And then we have 15 seconds to plug this in. There we go. So I've got 122 pounds at 80 degrees in there. That took just a couple of seconds to do. And now we're just going to move on to the next wheel. I won't show all four of them, but I'll show the next wheel here since we're on the same side. All right, we're going to select now the rear tire on this side. We'll hit the auto learn. That button's a little difficult to punch right. Plug that in. And there we go. That one took just a couple of more seconds, but we've got 123 pounds and 82 degrees over here. So that's the basic process. I'm not going to show the other two wheels, but I'm going to go do those real quick. And then we're going to go inside and we'll set up all of the high and low pressures and everything. So I just did the 4 tires on the axles. I will go back out there later to do the spare tire, but I wanted to come in now and let's look at how we manually program the high and low pressure alarms as well as the high temperature alarms. So a good rule of thumb for your high and low alarms is that your high pressure alarm should be set somewhere around 120% of your cold inflation pressure, and then your low pressure alarm to about 90% of your cold inflation pressure. So in my case, the cold inflation pressure is 120 pounds. So 120% of that is 144 pounds for the high pressure alarm. That's where I want this thing to basically alert me that there is some sort of problem. And this is super simple to do. Right now it's set at 147 because that was based off of the 122 or 123 pounds that tire was initially when we plugged in that sensor and we synced it. So it automatically did that 120%. But I want this number here, this high pressure alarm on axle number 5, which is, it says axle number 5, but it's my rear axle driver's side wheel. So all we have to do here is just highlight this number, the 147. I'm going to change this to 144, so I'm just going to back up here one number and change it to 144. I hit the enter button and it will beep. And that lets me know that the setting is in there. And then for my low pressure alarm, I'm going to go down to 90% of my cold inflation pressure. So that's going to be 108 pounds. So I'll just change that to 108. So now I've got my high pressure at 144, my low pressure at 108, and then my high temperature alarm, I'm going to leave that at 158. That's generally the number that you want to stick with your high temperature alarm, is at 158 degrees. So now I just need to go back in and change all the other tires. I don't know if I wasn't paying attention there or what, but I guess they're all set to 144. So I don't need to change anything else. I guess if you set one, you set them all, I guess. I don't know. I didn't really notice as I was poking through there. So anyway, they're all at 144 on the high pressure. They're all 108 on the low pressure. And then they're all 158 on the high temperature. So all of my set points are set. And essentially, I'm ready to roll down the road with these things and test them out and see how it works in like a real world application here. Actually, there's one more thing I want to do here, and I want to see what this thing sounds like when we get an alarm. So I'm actually going to change this high pressure set point to let's try 110, and because that's below the 122 that it's currently at. So let's try that and see what kind of alarm we get on this thing. Okay, so I can hear this thing beeping. And let me shut this off and then I'll tell you my thoughts on this. Okay, so my thought on that is that's not very loud. So if you're cruising down the highway and you got some tunes playing in the background, I'm not sure that that's loud enough to hear. So let's go into the settings and see if there's a volume adjustment. And if there is, we'll see if we can turn it up and then try that again. Here's our TPMS and I don't see any settings on here. So here's a volume button here. And so basically it was already set on the loudest volume. So that's, I think, maybe an issue here because I'm not sure that's loud enough. I don't know. We'll see what happens when we're headed down the road tomorrow. We'll make this thing give us an alarm and see what happens.
3 weeks later.
So I actually decided to go ahead and give this a few travel days before I circled back with you guys about just the whole experience with this thing. So number one, I was able to test that alarm as we were going down the road with music playing in the background. And when you're this close to it, unless you got those tunes really jamming loud, you're going to hear this alarm in the cab of your vehicle. So it turns out I don't have any issues at all with the volume on the alarm on this thing. So what I want to do now is just kind of give my overall thoughts on this thing after having used it for several drive days. This thing, I love it. I love this new backup camera with the built-in TPMS on it. So again, number one, I was able to get one thing off of my dashboard, and that was over here. It was actually on the window, but it was over here in this corner. That's an old camera mount I've got up there, but up next to that I had my dedicated TPMS, so I was able to get that kind of out of the view over there. And then up here, this is where my old navigation used to be. It was that Garmin 1010, and it was just this huge honking screen up there. And just on a different note, we started using a different GPS system that I don't have to mount up here on my dashboard. So granted, I do still have a screen up here, but it is much smaller and it noticeably takes up less space up here. So I really love that I've cleaned up my dashboard a little bit, not to mention all of the cables that were running around up here, the power cable coming up into that old system, plus the cables that came up to the screen that mounted on the rear view mirror here. All of that is now gone. My dashboard is so much cleaner. I love this setup. But how did it perform? I didn't have any problems with it at all. Well, let me back up. The first travel day, we did have some connection issues. Now, remember what I said earlier is this unit came with 2 signal boosters for those really long rigs like we have. So I was kind of being lazy to begin with, and I only used one of those signal boosters to start with. Well, that first day, we had to pull over pretty quickly and swap out back to our old TPMS system because I just wasn't getting the signal up here and nothing was syncing. So having said that, before the next underway, I got that second signal booster put in and I have had 0 problems with this thing. It does take a little bit of time for this thing to sync up initially when you turn it on. And one thing I really like about this is there's an on-off button down here on that cigarette lighter switch. You can just turn this thing on and off. I normally will come out here maybe 5 minutes or so before we actually want to get underway and just turn this thing on because it does take a little bit for the system to boot up and then to get that initial sync once it's turned on. But once it's on, I haven't had any issues at all getting these things synced up, and I haven't had any connection issues going down the road. So again, 2 signal boosters on my rig. I'm 44 feet. I've got 1 signal booster mounted right around that back axle on the rig. And then the second booster I've got in the front storage area up by the battery. Having both of those, I have 0 signal problems here. So I really like that setup. As far as the camera goes, I get a much better picture with this system than I did with that BT11, the one that went up here on the rear view mirror. That one was just washed out and it was really hard to see, especially on bright days. This one, I don't have any issues. It's got a really good picture and I'm able to see the cars that are back there no matter what the lighting situation is outside. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. The only other thing I have to say, again, is that Haloview did provide this to me at no charge for this video. And again, all I'm doing is just providing my honest thoughts on this system. I'm going to be using this system going forward. And I also need to mention that they did provide me with a discount code. So if you are interested in one of these Haloview BT7 systems with the integrated TPMS, make sure you check out that discount code that I'm going to put right down below in the video description area. So again, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and while you're down there, make sure you hit that bell button so you're notified of all of our future videos. And until those future videos, happy camping and stay safe out there, guys.